Hi, my name is Mona Schmidt, and I'm a senior IRB analyst. If you have questions about these slides, please reach out to me or Courtney. Why does reporting matter? This has everything to do with respect for persons. When someone volunteers to be in research, they have confidence that a complete protocol has been reviewed. Changes to the protocol without IRB review and approval can have a negative impact on trust in research. There is an off-road option. It would be appropriate to change the protocol if you are trying to eliminate an apparent immediate hazard for a participant. But even though you don't need to get prior IRB approval for making this change, you should submit an RNI as soon as possible afterwards to notify the IRB that you made the change. The Investigator Manual, HRP 103, which can be found on multiple places on our website, and it's on the first page there, has detailed information regarding reporting requirements. Here are some, but not all of the things that require an RNI. Anything to do with new or increased risk should be reported. So new risk is obvious, but if you have a risk that's listed in the protocol as maybe a rare risk, and during the research you're finding out that it is more common, that should be submitted as an RNI and any possible changes associated with that. Suspensions should be reported, non-compliance, unanticipated problem involving risk to subjects or others, a UPERTSO, that should be reported. Unexpected harm, participant complaints, researcher failure due to the action or inaction to follow the protocol, a withdrawal, restriction, or modification of marketed approval of a drug, device, or biologic, any report or audit or inspection from something like the FDA, those things, unexpected death, all of those things should be reported. Note that you should not hold up submitting an RNI to get sponsor approval. So if an RNI and a modification will both need to be submitted, you're reporting something, it's going to require protocol change and maybe consent form change. Sometimes it takes a while to get the sponsor to vet the change to the consent form, but you shouldn't hold up the RNI to wait for that because that needs to be submitted within 5 days. You should, in both the RNI and the modification, you should note that they are related to the other, and then you can do this by adding a comment. And then in the RNI, you can also link that both to the main study and to that modification. So there's a couple of case studies we're going to talk about. One, we had a couple participants who had the neuropsych exam as the protocol required, but they did not have the protocol-specific evaluation forms filled out because the psychologist who trained on those forms was out on leave. Is this reportable to the IRB? So the question to ask is, was this under the PI control? And yes, this was. So this falls under researcher error, failure to follow the protocol due to the action or inaction of the investigator or research staff. So the PI is responsible for making sure there is someone there to perform these assessments. So that would be reportable. If a participant misses a study visit because he was admitted to the hospital the night before, would that be reportable to the IRB? That is something you have to think about. Was this in the PI's control? Probably not. However, why was that person admitted to the hospital? So it might not be a protocol deviation that was in the PI's control, but what if it was related to study procedures? Then it might be a UPERTSO, and so then in that case, it should be reported. So in this instance, like in many of them, you have to look at the circumstances to figure out if it should be reported or not. And the investigator manual has information to help you decide that. So if somebody withdraws, they attend, but after the second visit, they withdraw. Is this reportable to the IRB? And again, think about it. Was this in the PI's control? Probably not, but consider if maybe if it was something where the study team forgot to give them information that they needed to get to the study on time or mandated instructions. So if it had something to do with an omission by the study team, then it would be reportable. But if it was totally out of their control, then it wouldn't be. And the other thing is that you do always want to report when you do your continuing reviews, you would list withdrawals, and you should have the reason there for the withdrawal. So be sure and, you should remember to do that and to find out what that reasoning is, because it will be reviewed at a later time. So this one, the case study was an out of window visit. So the participant visit was out of window by 5 days, and it was because the participant did not inform the study team that they rescheduled the study visit. So is this reportable? Was it in the PI's control? Probably not, but you should consider whether or not a participant should be able to move that study visit without the study team's knowledge. So this is something that might be reportable, and it also might require a change to the protocol or the consent form. So a missed study instrument. A participant came in for a study visit and did not complete that. The study team member had multiple participants that day and just missed giving them that. Is that something that should be reported? And was this in their control? Yes, it was. So the study team is responsible for ensuring that all procedures are done as approved by the IRB. So that is reportable. So how do we review RNIs? The focus of the review, we have two toolkit documents. One of them is a worksheet for reportable new information, and the other one is an SOP that we use to assess RNI submissions. OHARP will assess when they assess whether or not corrective actions will help ensure that the incident will not happen again. With the investigator or protocol, or any other investigator or protocol, or with the IRB, they kind of want us to take a step back and look and see, is this a problem for this study, or is this possibly a problem that has more of an overall impact? In which case, we may end up updating the investigator manual or other toolkit documents to address that. We will focus on participant safety and evaluate whether procedures are in place to minimize risk to participants and whether the adequacy of the actions that the investigator is taking to address the problem is appropriate. So if they're revising the protocol, updating the consent form, making a CAPA plan, is that sufficient to deal with this problem? Other IRB actions, when we get an RNI, we kind of go through how to move forward with that. So we can acknowledge it, in which case you wouldn't have anything else to do. We could require more information and send it back to you and ask. You might have to update like what has happened since you submitted the initial RNI. A UPERTSO determination could be made, or a non-compliance, and that could either be serious, continuing, or non-compliance that is neither serious nor continuing. And Additional considerations would also be considered to enhance protection of participants. And you notice that three of those things would basically denotes that those decisions, those IRB decisions, which those would be made by a full committee review, and those are reportable to institutional officials and external entities when applicable. So IRB, we have reporting responsibilities when they rise to that level for, are you PERTSO, serious or continuing noncompliance, or if a study is suspended or terminated, we have to report within 30 calendar days. We have to notify the PI in writing, and they will be copied on all the reports. And the reports are sent to university leaders and, when applicable, external regulatory entities such as the FDA. So some observations from reviewing RNI submissions. Sometimes RNIs submitted, they don't really require to be submitted. They don't fall within the reporting requirements, but that's okay. If there's an unexpected death that probably isn't related to research, it still needs to be reported. The investigator manual just says whether the death is considered related or not, you should report within 5 days. And then the IRB will evaluate that reported death and make that determination regarding relatedness. Common IRB requests or revisions. What are corrective and action plans? What is the timeline of the key events? When did it happen? When did you find out about it? And if you didn't submit it in time, why not? Also, are you going to notify participants of significant new findings? We might request additional documentation, such as detailed information from the investigator sponsor or a recent review by the DSMB. Some of the observations from the RNIs we see is there's a lack of detail. So if there's a new risk, you want to add more about that big picture. You want to let us know how many participants are currently enrolled, how many are actively receiving an investigational agent or drug. You also want to provide clinical context if you have that. We may require ancillary reviews be completed before IRB review. And then again, if you don't submit within 5 days, you should provide the reason why that was not done that way. So some common findings when in QA audits are regulatory issues, which documentation issues, which can be FDA communications that haven't been submitted. Consent can be elements that are missing or not using the short form. Data security and privacy has to do with HIPAA and HIPCO issues. And then compliance with protocol or IRB regulations are other issues that we see. A common finding when QA audits a study is personnel who are not added in ethos but are performing research activities. So if you're ever uncertain, do we need to add this person in ethos? On page 27 of the investigator manual, it tells you, it has a section who is considered study personnel. And if you add somebody, you have to make sure that you have IRB approval before they do any study activities. So a discussion topic that came up from December 2nd training was whether minor deviations, say a blood draw that maybe was 20 minutes out of the time parameter in the protocol, does that require an RNI? And the answer to that is yes, that according to the investigator manual, any deviation should be reported within 5 business days of the study team member learning of the deviation. So we do have an expectation that you do that. Say that somebody calls you the day before, before a scheduled visit and they're out of town and due to weather conditions, their flight was canceled, they won't be back. That is something that does not need to be reported because it's out of your control. And that also is detailed in the investigator manual. So if you have questions, you can look at that. So there is a helpful guide, corrective and preventive action plan guide, and that's on the IRB website. And so if you look under how to submit and reportable new information, you'll find that guide there. That is a useful tool for you if you have to come up with a corrective action plan. It tells you how to assess the problem and how to implement changes and then how to see if they're working. So it really is useful. And there also is a lunch and learn on that. So those recordings are available on the education site, IRB website. Here are some support services that you may find helpful. You can always email IRB or phone the general line if you're not certain who to talk to. And then there are office hours for all the IRB analysts. You can click on the staff list and find out their phone numbers. So you can call, you can email, or go to the office hour. If you're unable to attend an office hour, but you have a question for a specific analyst, you can email them and set up a time that works for you. So if you have questions, reach out. When in doubt, report, and then you can always use our email if you need to do that. So thank you.